Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 21st episode this week, where we'll be breaking down last Saturday's game versus the Buffalo Bills, discussing news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats300LevelPod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, going into the Buffalo Bills game, wild card weekend, we knew it was going to be a big game, obviously. First playoff game since Tom Brady left. First playoff game without Tom Brady since 1998, going up against a division rival. We knew we weren't entirely sure which teams were going to really show up. The first game was played in just crazy weather. The second game was a beatdown. I know both of you and I picked the Patriots to win in a close game, and what we got was just the exact opposite. What was your thoughts? What did you take away from this game?
I think it was a complete embarrassment by the Patriots, number one. I think, judging by all the games I've seen from them over the last, 25 years or so, this is probably one of the worst games, at least over the last 20 years with Bill Belichick. This is probably one of the worst defensive games I've ever seen from them. Probably ever. The only other one that stands out was the Eagles Super Bowl, where it's basically the same sort of thing. Every play was a score, basically. So every possession was a score, where I don't think that team punted either. And it was very alarming. And just the complete lack of really doing anything to stop them. They're kind of manhandled you overall, and that was really disappointing, really frustrating to watch. And for playoff game's sake, I think the only one it kind of compares to, just the feeling watching it, was that Ravens game where you never had a chance back in 2010. 2009,
the Ray Rice game where they got
the Ray Rice game,
touchdown.
The first game where it was like a 70-yard touchdown. So it had feelings of that, but this is even worse, where you just knew really after the second score that this defense isn't going to do anything, like it was a few weeks ago when they faced them. And this looked even worse. And it makes sense why it looks worse. You're down more players. There's more injuries on the team. But I thought it was a huge embarrassing game by the Patriots overall.
Yeah, no, I agree to an extent. I understand why it was worse because of injuries and everything like that. But I don't think it should have been worse, because you saw what they did the last time. You didn't, at least from a fan's point of view, it didn't look like that they made any adjustments last game. And that, which was uncharacteristic, because typically what does Bill Belichick do, especially at halftime, is he's known for making adjustments, especially if they're beating you. And it just seemed like he didn't make any adjustments. And it looked like we thought, okay, he has a few weeks to game plan for this. They've just played them recently. They've game planned for them twice in the last 6 weeks. So he'll have something to stop Josh Allen. And then even the week after Josh Allen destroyed the Patriots, he had probably the worst game of his career, which is saying something, because he had a bad rookie year and sophomore year, where he was, I think, 10 for 24, 3 interceptions, a passer rating under 20. So it's not like he's been MVP caliber all season, but you thought Dean Pease found a way to stop him. He didn't do great the week after as well. Bill Belichick will find something even if they're down. And then Josh Allen played even better than he did against the Patriots the last time they played, which is pretty impressive. And just pathetic from the Patriots' point of view. They made no adjustments again. They just couldn't find a way to stop them. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing with this game, and before we kind of start even talking about even more, but just to kind of address what a lot of people are saying after this game, this wasn't a Josh Allen referendum. This wasn't that he is so elite where he could kind of tear through you and beat you no matter what. We've talked about his physical skills, which are really good. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. He's got a cannon of arm. His accuracy's improved a decent amount. But you look at the Patriots game a few weeks ago, and then you look at his games afterwards, and he was poor. He was poor against the Falcons. He was poor against the Jets. He was poor against there was the other game I can't think of what's at my head. He didn't play well afterwards. And I'm not to say he's a bad quarterback, and I don't think his stats reflect entirely over that, but he's not also this elite superstar quarterback. in the league. I think this is more a reflection on the Patriots defense than Josh Allen. It's not something where, oh, you have to worry about Josh Allen. He's going to destroy you every single year for the next 10, 15 years. He can be handled, and we've seen other teams handle it. We've seen Belichick handle him in the past, but that was when he wasn't as good as he's played recently. But this was more of just a reflection on how bad the Patriots played them and their game plan going in. And it also kind of shows that game plan we'll talk about a little bit further on, where it was kind of a complete lack of a game plan. It was, we're going to settle back, play a soft zone, flood the zone with these soft different zones, and just wait for Josh to screw up. And you can't play like that and just hope that he's going to make a mistake. You need to force him to make a mistake. And one of the biggest things we've seen with him is if you blitz him, his completion percentage and his interceptions go up dramatically. And you did nothing to do that. And I think that was kind of a tell from Bill that he had no faith whatsoever in his defense at all. I don't think he had any faith in his corners right now, because if you look at it, they've been decimated at that position. They're without Jonathan Jones. Mills was on the COVID list. They traded Gilmore during the season. So really all they have is J.C. Jackson. They've got Jawan Williams, who's a bum. They've got Miles Bryant, who's a decent slot cornerback. But he's no Jonathan Jones. He's not a lockdown corner, not a lockdown man-to-man player. And they have special teams players. So the way that they've played him the last two times is that kind of hoping he's going to make a mistake, and that if he doesn't, that's what ends up happening. He eats you apart because you're playing these soft zones and your team's just not talented to get pressure on them or cover any of the receivers.
Yeah, I thought one thing that I noticed early on was I think they were trying to get pressure. If you looked at first few series, Dante Hightower was blitzing almost every single time. And I know he's had a couple good games here and there this year, but it looks like he has lost a step. And it's not that he isn't as effective as he was a few years ago when you need a sack on a quarterback. He's the one blitzing, and he's going to get it like he did in the Falcons Super Bowl. He did in the Rams Super Bowl. I saw him rushing. It looked like they were trying to get some pressure early on. They just weren't successful. And then also something that just was striking was Matthew Judon as well. His 3 worst games of the year, at least by Pro Football Focus, were against the Bills, with this one in the playoffs being the worst. And he only played, I believe, 22 of the 51 defensive snaps the entire game, which he was your defensive leader the entire season. And ever since a few weeks before the bye, something just happened. I don't know if it's injuries, something else, just worn down, but he's just not the same. And I think that's part of it, where early on in the season, you could have Judon getting pressure, Barmore getting pressure. And if you blitz one other person or just them alone would be able to wreak havoc, where if you're down one, you're not able to do the same thing. And since they were able to get pressure, even though you are a little depleted in the secondary compared to other teams, they were still able to be successful. And I think that was a big reason as well. Some of your other players that you thought would be able to get pressure going into the season was Chase Winovich. He was inactive for the game. He was your leader in sacks last year with 6.5. I know he's more of just a pass rusher, but he could have been someone that they could have used to get after him, unless he's just regressed over the past couple of years. And then Uche as well, where I know I've brought this up a lot the past month or so, but he was, a lot of people expected him to take that next step and be one of your leaders on defense, especially rushing the passer, and he just hasn't been utilized correctly. I don't know if it's just he hasn't been showing it in practice, or the injury that he suffered early on in the season is still hampering him, but I don't know. I think that was a big issue. It was just a frustrating game. That was the most ugly game I've ever seen the Patriots play. And I know you brought up the Eagles Super Bowl, which is a good comparison, but in the Eagles Super Bowl, they at least forced them to kick 3 field goals. This time they only got to 6 third downs, and all those third downs they converted. And even when they got to third down, it didn't really seem like they were, I think there was only one time where you thought maybe they would stop them. And it was Judon's first play, I believe the first drive, where he was in coverage, Josh Allen went to scramble and Judon just completely whiffed on him, or just got his ankles broken essentially, and Allen ran for a first down. And that was kind of an indication of where this game was going to be going.
Yeah. And to kind of jump on that, Judon, this was the only game other than the Dolphins game where he was returning from COVID, where he actually didn't start the game either. He was used in those sub packages, and you're paying him $13 million. You have to hope there's something wrong with him, either injury or something personal going on.
You don't hope there's something wrong, but from his play point of view,
from the way he's playing, you got to hope that the amount of money he's being paid and owed, that there's a reason behind it and it's fixable, rather than there's a complete lack of buy-in right now. And it's like in another Darius Thomas situation, where he was used a ton from the beginning of the season. He's even used on special teams, which I think is a little overkill based on how much they've used him. So maybe there's something lingering that they haven't mentioned. He wasn't on the injury report at all, but we know those things aren't always the most accurate of everything. And I know that he did have him and his wife or partner at a kid in the middle of the season. So maybe there's something with that, just a lack of sleep or something with that situation. But the way he's played recently, the last five or so games, has not been up to kind of the talent that he needs to be at.
So I just have some stats kind of backing that up.
Yeah.
So the first 11 games, 10.5 sacks, 22 quarterback hits. The next 7, or the last 7, 2 sacks, 4 hits over 7 games. If you want to go even deeper, first 13 games, 25 hits, 12.5 sacks. Last 5 games, 1 QB hit, 0 sacks, which is for how productive he was the first 2/3 of the season, where people were saying, including us, we were both saying he should be at least considered for defensive player of the year, just to fall off like that. And part of me thinks it could just be he got worn down. Just one comparison it brings up is Chandler Jones. I believe in 2015 or 2016, through the first 10 games, he had about 12.5 sacks, similar to Judon's numbers for a sacks point of view. And it was looking like he might have a shot at least chasing Patriots single season record of Andre Tippett's, which was 18.5. And then the last 6 or 7 games, he had 0 sacks, which is similar to Matthew Judon's numbers too. So it could just be he was used so much that he just got worn down as the season went on.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
That hopefully is the reason why, and that it wasn't like a complete lack of buy-in or anything like that. There was something notable that possibly has changed since the bye week, though. We know we kind of use that as that tipping point when things have changed recently, and that's when they started playing sloppy again. That's when they kind of looked like that 2-4 team from before. And the big question was, is it just that they're being exposed, that they're just not as talented and they were just beating up on bad teams, or did something really happen that bye week? That's just a big question that hopefully some of the beat reporters may kind of get a little bit more action on and see what really happened. But it's something just to kind of wonder about what happened from that bye week. Was there a change? Did Bill maybe give up some of the control he had over the defense, where he wasn't in as much control because they were playing so well, and maybe he tried giving the reins back over to Gerard and Steve, and maybe that caused an issue of communication issues and why everything just didn't look right. But it's just something to look at. And it's just another thing where to bring up that 2019 boogeyman, where we have a lot of retreads from that team, and that team faded beyond as the year went on. And this is just an older team too. So when you're going on throughout the season, are they young enough? And that'll be something we're going to be getting into in a few episodes from now, what to potentially do to try and fix this team. But do they just run out of gas at the end of the year? And is that one of the big problems, where these are kind of the same retreads, and you need kind of those younger legs to be using, like you had said, the Winoviches and Uches. And I get maybe Uche doesn't set the edge as much as you would like, but what's Judon doing right now at this point either? So I think that's just some questions we'll get into later on in a few weeks from now on another podcast, which is what to potentially do with this roster, where it's not all in bad situations. There are pieces there. It's just some small tweaks that need to be made to make it better. It's not like we could expect a huge transformation in 1 year from that 7-9 team, which was a pretty awful team, and they should have probably been worse than that if Bill wasn't the coach. To at least making the playoffs and looking better. So it's going to take time. So it's not going to be something that happens overnight.
Yep. Just one thing I just want to briefly bring up, because it's something that you mentioned as well, is the fading down the stretch, where this is actually the third straight year we've seen this. Traditionally with Belichick-led teams, where they usually get stronger as the year goes on, as that's when they pretty much lock into step. You could argue even 4 straight years, where the 2018 team, which did win the Super Bowl, they did have those 2 losses in a row in December, which then they faced the Jets and they kind of turned things around. But 2019, they started the year 8-0. They finished the regular season 4-4. If you include the playoffs, 4-5. Last year, they lost 4 of their last 5 games, or 3 of their last 4 games, when they were in contention of possibly making one of those last playoff spots. And then this year, they were 8-4 at the break, 8-4, and then they lost, or 9-4. They were 9-4 at the break, and then they went 1-4 over their last 5 games. So it's just something to keep an eye on.
Yep. So kind of going. Anything else on the defense you'd like to get to, or do you want to kind of get into the offense a little bit?
Just only things with the defense it was pretty much everyone. It wasn't 1 or 2 players where all the secondary got lit up. JC Jackson didn't play like a number 1 corner. He played like he did early on in the season, where he was just inconsistent. And once again, they let Isaiah McKenzie just kill them. Someone that I think the most catches he had in a game leading into the season was 2. In the season was 2 before the 11 catch outburst a couple weeks ago. And then once again, his just speed lit them up. And I wouldn't be shocked that the Patriots go after him this offseason, because he's a free agent, just similar like how they did with Wes Welker or other people that beat them during the season. But I don't know. It just was maddening how once again, someone that just wasn't producing all year just beat you for the second straight game.
Kind of switching gears and going to the offense. What did you really make of how this offense played? And what were kind of your thoughts with that?
I thought Mac played really well. I know he had 2 interceptions. The first interception, which kind of, I don't know if it changed the trajectory of the game, but if he hits that, if Micah Hyde doesn't make an insane play on an interception, that's a touchdown to Aguilar, assuming Aguilar catches it, which is no guarantee. But other than that, there was the pass or it's Hunter Henry, I believe, which was deflected and then interception. But other than that, he just played really well. He was the only one that was pretty much fighting as seemed. They were down 30 points in the third quarter, and he was being the lead blocker, going up against a 270-pound defensive end and blocking him to allow the running back to get a decent amount of yards. So he had some fight. He was willing to put his body on the line. And that's something we've seen from him all year, where it's probably not always the smartest, where he's going in for a block or he's trying to push the pile, where you want him to stay healthy. You want him to understand the situation, but in a playoff game where it's do or die, you have to love that fight. And it seems like he's won over his teammates as well. I thought he played one of his best games of the season, going up against a really good defense. So I thought he was one of the only bright spots other than Kendrick Bourne, who once again was showing he should have been utilized more throughout the year, but
yeah, I completely agree. I think Mac really kind of showed you something, if not just this game was an awful game, but at least it gave you a little bit more answers to kind of the questions. Number one, how would he kind of compete under the bright lights in the playoff game? We thought that he would play well based on kind of the games that we've seen so far this year. The Bucks game where he played really well. There's the Cowboys game where he played really well. They didn't win both games, but he showed that he wasn't kind of scared of the situation.
And then even just going back to college, you could argue 2 of his best games in college was the first round of the college playoffs and then the national championship game. So I wasn't really too concerned, but it was just encouraging seeing him going up against such a good defense and to put on that or play as well as he did. Yeah.
I wasn't concerned going in. It's just something that you kind of have to check off once you see it, just to know how it is, where I was pretty sure he would be fine with it, but just something that you don't know until you see it. And I think he kind of surpassed my expectations. It seemed like he played even better than he has the last few weeks, where he kind of brought this extra edge to him, and something that like you would see with Brady from before. Not to say he's going to be Brady, but those competitors where the bright lights and that what's going to happen kind of brings your next level up, where you need to step it up. And I think he kind of answered that. That first drive, he was really the only one. Him and Bourne were the only ones with really any life in the drive. And you even saw that where he broke away and made that Henry get that 30-yard Henry catch. And then there was even just that first play where that first throw to the left to Bourne was something that is a pretty hard throw to make, and he looked really well in it. So I don't think you have to worry about him in the cold either, which some people would say questions, how would he do based on it? Not saying that he would do bad, but just because we haven't seen it, like we had said before, where we just don't know, where you would assume that it'd be fine, but you just don't know. And I think kind of answer those questions. And then just that scramble that he had before, where just he's not known as a running quarterback or anything. I think he's a little bit more athletic than people give him credit for.
Yeah, I agree.
He's not like a statue. He's not even like Brady, where Brady, I think, ran like a 5.3 or something like that, and he ran a 4.7. So it's not like he's.
Brady got fat. To Brady's credit, he did get a lot. He has gained speed as he's gotten older, which is kind of the opposite of what you expect.
Yeah, but he broke through with that, and it just showed toughness. He just showed a lot of stones in this game, and it made me actually really happy watching this, knowing that he's only going to get better as it goes on. And this is my big takeaway just from the offense overall, which is Mac, where I'm pretty happy where how he played this and how good he looked. And a lot of the plays that he made were really good. The only kind of down play was that second interception where he could have gone in a different direction. I think that was a pretty tough play to try and make, even if it wasn't tipped. But I think that's the good thing to come out of this. The bad was some of just the overall execution from other players. Shaq Mason and Trent Brown had probably their worst games of the year this year. Jonnu Smith was awful. He barely played, and when he did play, he was not good. He was making poor blocks. They really have to get him right for next year and get him in a better position. And the run game wasn't great. I think Stevenson did really well in the run game. I don't think Harris was as good, and I think it kind of helped with Stevenson because the Bills are a little bit quicker. I feel like Stevenson's a little bit more quick than Harris is, so he has a little bit more kind of explosion. There's something different about Stevenson than Harris, where Harris is kind of more, I feel like, more of a power.
I feel like Harris shoots through the line quicker than Stevenson does.
There's just something with Stevenson where he's a little bit more agile. I feel like he can get more shifty, maybe. But yeah, there's other than that, and Aguilar didn't have a great game. And I know that drop, that interception isn't on him at all. I know some people blamed him for that, where, you have to get up and knock the ball out of his hands. If you watch the reverse angle on there,
there's no way he could have done.
No, first of all, no way he could have knocked it out.
Yeah.
Second of all, there's no way he even saw him coming because he already knew he had beaten the corner. He did not see him coming from the other spot. And at that point, he's trying to find the ball and make sure he catches it. He's not looking to his right to see if someone's coming, because that was a 99% of the times that would have never happened. And he would have never made it there. That's an Ed Reed type of play, a Troy Polamalu type of play. One of those elite safeties, Hall of Fame safeties, makes that play. And
Micah Hyde is an all-pro safety, so there's very few players in the NFL that could make that. It was
almost a perfect ball too. If it was perfect, it would have been maybe 6 inches to the left, and it would have never made it. But in those situations and that deep of a throw, that's all he could have asked for Mac and even Aguilar. It was just a spectacular play by Hyde. And if you even look at the replay, I don't know that he was actually even trying to catch it at that point.
I don't think
it looked like he was trying to break it up, and somehow it stuck on his hands and then realized he could catch it. And I don't think he was intending on trying intercepting it at the beginning. So other than that, anything of note on the offense?
Just one is, I thought Justin Herron actually played very well. Considering I know that that was one of our biggest concerns going into the game, at least from the offensive point of view, was they're without Isaiah Wynn, who has been inconsistent this year. But when we've seen Justin Herron, at least when he was playing at right tackle, he was just horrendous. But when he was at left tackle in the Texans game, he played pretty good. So that was at least encouraging to see. He held his own, and you could argue, one of your best offensive linemen the entire game.
Yeah, no, I think he played really well, and I think that's a good sign for the come. It may be, and I think it's something we kind of talked about because we did a lot of line talk at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And there's differences between different sides of the line. There's differences between different positions of the line. It's not something one person can play every spot. One person can play, if you can play tackle, you could play right tackle or left tackle. If you play guard, you play right or left guard. Some people, it's just the way that you're seeing things and you're doing things. He may just be a better left tackle than a right tackle because when he's played left tackle, he hasn't looked bad. When he played right tackle, he didn't look good. So maybe it's something you can build upon. Maybe you can kind of get out from that win contract if Herron maybe shows you something, because Wynn's going to be costing you $10 million. And I don't know if you've seen enough from him where you would want to extend him later on from that. So that's just something where that was kind of another bright spot in there for that. Let's go up to 3 up, 3 down. If you want to say your first one, then I'll say mine. I think we probably have the first 2 are probably similar.
Do you want me to say all 3 or just my number 1?
Let's go number 1 and we'll go back and forth.
Okay. My number 1 is Mac. Not much more to say than I already did. Just he had pretty good game. I know the stats, if you just look at the stats, you might not think he did, but just watching him, he threw some of his best balls all year. Even that Aguilar ball was a pretty good deep ball. If it was just maybe, like you said, 6 inches of foot to the left, then that's a touchdown. But if Micah Hyde wasn't the safety, it was any other safety in the NFL, chances are that was a touchdown. So I thought he just had a really good game. And it's just encouraging that, like a lot of the Patriots players said after the game, is this franchise is in a good position going forward with number 10 as your quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree. Here's my number one up for this. I think he played really well in this game. I talked a lot about him before. And just to kind of mention again on that, all of the commentary you're seeing from this is not something you see a ton of usually. And just the amount of buy-in and love for Mac from all those other teammates, this kind of shows how special of a player he might be. Not to say he's going to be this Hall of Fame caliber worthy, but he's tough. And that's just something that kind of shows. And you don't see that a lot with rookies where they kind of show their dominance and show how tough they are and kind of win that buy-in. And it's just something nice to see going into next year where maybe he'll have a little bit more of that alpha quarterback in him and kind of put people in the right spots. And one of my big kind of gripes with Hunter Henry, and I like him a lot, is that there's been a ton of times this season, even in this game, where he's not on the same page. He's not running the right route. And where maybe having one more year and Mac being in the second year, not a rookie, he can kind of lay into him a little bit in practice saying, I want you here. This is what you have to do. And kind of get him to run the right route, where there's something Brady would do before. And you can't, it's kind of tough as a rookie to do.
And then another thing along those lines is even just having a full off season together where when Mac came in, he wasn't the number 1. He wasn't really practicing with the number 1. So having a full offseason being the number 1 quarterback, I'm assuming that even when they're not at OTAs, they're going to get together and do some practices, sort of like Patriots West, like we saw with Cam and Stidham, where you'll see them getting more of that chemistry, knowing what each other wants. Not only just Mac and Hunter, but all the others, Jacoby Myers, assuming he's back, Kendrick Bourne, Jonnu Smith will be a big one. And then if they get any other wide receivers, I think this offseason is going to be huge for them.
Yeah, that's I completely agree. My number 2 up was Bourne. I think he was the only other really kind of offensive player, running back, quarterback, that really came to play, or really anyone.
I don't think you have
team.
To limit that to offense. I think
even defense. I think he's really one of the few other ones that came to play. He had a lot of intensity. And I think you're really set up to come next year with Bourne and having more of a rapport with him, having him learn the offense a little bit more. Because I think one of the reasons why he didn't play as much in the beginning was, and you even said this last game too in the Miami game, where he doesn't always have a complete understanding still of this offense where he runs the wrong routes. But I think just having another year under his belt, having a little bit more comfortable, have more faith in him. But between him and Henry, I think they'll be in a good spot. But I think he played really well in this game and had a lot of kind of stones and grit that they need.
No, I agree completely. And I've been one of the biggest Kendrick Bourne supporters ever since the day they signed him. I thought that he would take over that Edelman type role. I know he's not exactly the same, but he's very shifty, very elusive. And when utilized, he was very productive. He had combined, I think, over 800 yards receiving, actually over 900 yards receiving and rushing. The other thing that was surprising was he only saw the field on 51% of the snaps, which was number 10 on the overall offense and number 3 out of wide receivers, which I still don't get. I know it's calling it. It's probably just he didn't have a full understanding. He was either running the wrong places or he wasn't a strong enough blocker. So in running downs, he just wasn't on the field. But I think hopefully you saw what he's capable of and just another year on this offense taking that next step. But he was probably your number one playmaker outside of the Harris-Stevenson combo. And he's going to he just showed grit, 7 catches, 77 yards, 2 TDs, and then also a run for 14 yards. So he's one of your playmakers, and they have to start utilizing him next year, even more so than they did now.
Completely agree. Who's your number 3 up?
So I have it as a tie, which is surprising because there weren't too many people, but I just wanted to. 2 people I've been down on all year, I thought actually had good games, so I might as well just give it to them. Justin Herron, who I said he had a pretty good game on offensive line. I said a little bit about it already, so not going to go too much into it. But then also Jake Bailey. I thought he had a good game. He only had 3 punts, but 2 of them were inside the 20 and averaged, I believe, 53 yards per punt. So he was so inconsistent throughout this year. Maybe this is a saving grace that prevents the Patriots. This, along with how bad they played and the infusion of talent that the team needs, that they won't be willing to waste a 3rd or 4th round pick on Matt Araiza. But I think that he had a good game. And if they don't decide to move on from him, hopefully it's just an injury or something that's holding him back.
Yeah, I think he had I was actually thinking it during the game that surprisingly it's actually punting pretty well. He's getting it within the 20s, not having a touchback, and he had a nice booming punt for that other one. So I actually thought he had a good game. My number 3 up was David Andrews. I think he was probably the best offensive lineman in the game. Again, I think besides Mack and Bourne, he was one of the few other ones to kind of show up in this game. And I think one of the things is I think he really enjoys these kind of cold weather games where he can kind of show that he's being a man there. He's walking out there, short sleeves. And, but I think he had a good game in this and was probably the best offensive lineman in the game. Going to 3 down, I'll say my first one, which I think is similar to yours, is Bill, Steve, and Mayo, all of the coaching staffs. I think the game plan that they put together was horrible. I don't think they did anything to put them in the best position. I think part of I can kind of understand where they're maybe coming from, where they knew they just don't have the talent to do it, and they're just hoping that Josh will beat himself. That's no way to try and win a game, and especially a playoff game. You have to try and at least, I feel like, go down swinging in that case, where maybe you know that you don't have the man covers to do that, or you know that if you try and blitz, well, you'll have to man up because you can't have a complete zone. But at least try and try and stop it and try and blitz with corners and do something not so passive and weak and afraid that it just ended up this was one of the worst defensive performances they've ever had. So I'd say
any team, especially in the playoffs, too, has ever had.
I think it's the only time a team has never punted or never had a field goal on every. I think it's the only time they've scored a touchdown on every single drive they've had.
It is, and that was my number 1 too. Is when they played 3 weeks ago, the message coming out of that game was the Patriots made no adjustments on defense to try and stop the Bills. And going into this, like I said earlier, is I thought they'd make some adjustments, and they pretty much threw the exact same game plan out, hoping pretty much the definition of insanity is assuming not doing anything different and assuming that you're going to get a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why after the first 2 drives, you're doing the same thing you did last time and there's no difference, why you don't try and switch it up. Why don't you have a contingency, a plan B, a plan C?
Mm-hmm.
Why not you're not, that he's not good under pressure. Why don't you do an all-out blitz, rush 8?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you might have to do man coverage, and if he gets it out quick, they might beat you for a touchdown, but you're not stopping them right now anyway. So what difference is it going to make? At least try something. I didn't get it. One thing I said going into the week was blitz with corners, blitz with defensive backs, sort of like how the Dolphins did against the Ravens to stop them. Because that way, if he at least breaks containment, the defensive back is fast enough to catch him from behind. They didn't do that either. So just no adjustments whatsoever. Interesting. I forgot to mention this earlier, but the Patriots or the Bills had 51 plays. 29 of them were for first downs. 7 of them were for touchdowns. So essentially 36 of their 51 plays went for either a touchdown or a first down.
Yeah. And there was one point in the game where the Patriots had 17 plays on offense. The Bills had already had 18 first downs
and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Which is insane. And one thing actually I forgot to mention about Bill were kind of his fourth down calls, where one of them, looking back, at first during the situation, I agreed with him. It was 4th and 1 on their own 30 something. And I was like, oh, that's a Staley move if he goes for it. But kind of thinking back on it, he should have realized what kind of game it was going to be. And they hadn't stopped the Bills in one game plus two drives where they should have probably gone for it. The biggest one was the 4th and 8 on their own 50-yard line, where they had already not stopped them, and they punting it. They ended up just scoring again in 2 minutes and made it a 20-something point game going into that 20-point game going into the half, or 27-point game going into the half. So that was just another thing where playing that conservative, knowing that your defense is not good enough, that you have to try and score points, and not doing that. So that was just another thing to add there.
Yeah, and the pathetic thing too about it was I think the first 4 or 5 touchdowns too were all 75+ yard drives, every single one of them. It's not like they had short field position after a turnover or anything. So it was just sickening game to watch. And then this leads me to my number 2 down, which is just the defense as a whole. It was a terrible game plan, but then the execution was just horrendous as well. All your defensive backs got lit up. Kyle Duggar, who's pretty good in coverage, he allowed 2 touchdowns. JC Jackson didn't play like an all-pro. Juwan Williams was horrendous, like always, or 80% of the time he's on the field. Miles Bryant wasn't great. Linebackers were too slow to really be good in coverage. So, and then even just the defensive line wasn't able to get pressure outside of Barmore in his limited plays due to his injury.
Yep. I completely agree with that. I don't have that. I have it on my list of honorable mentions because I wanted to get into 2 different other players, but I completely agree with that. I think the defense as a whole was not good. So my second one was JC Jackson. I think he had a really poor game. And this was just something where he kind of looked a little out of it, and maybe he wasn't giving it his all. Maybe he knew that this game plan they had was terrible, and he's like, oh, we're not going to win anyway. Or maybe he's just not. I think he's good because when he tries to lock down, we've seen bits and pieces where he could be a lockdown corner. Is his head going to always be in it? That's one thing where you may want to look going into this offseason, but you kind of need him now. So, but he did not play well. Who's your next one?
Just going on quickly on Jackson, that's the thing that concerns me a little bit going into this offseason is the first 6-7 weeks of the season. I thought he was very inconsistent. He wasn't playing like a number 1 corner, which is why he was on my 3 down for most of the first half of the season. Second half, he was a complete lockdown corner, but then this, as your last game you're seeing going into the offseason, is just a little concerning, where the franchise tag on cornerback, I believe, is going to be $17 million, which we'll get into this in a couple episodes, but is he worth first cornerback money? And if you say no, do you have people that can replace him to do that based on your current roster, who you think you can get for the amount of money it's going to take? I don't know if that's if you do. So that's just something we'll get into later, but I just wanted to bring up quickly.
Yeah, that's a big thing to bring up. And I think that just a kind of little prelude to what may happen. You may be stranglehold where you have no other option, or you may have to pay him. But is it better off paying him just for 1 year rather than giving him a big extension where you don't have to worry about after this 1 year, you're gone with him. If you give him a big extension and he kind of, I got my money, that's all I need, then that may be a bad situation. So,
my number 3 down was the offensive line, where second game in a row against the Bills where they were pretty much just getting pushed around outside of Justin Herron and David Andrews. But offensive line, Michael Onwenu wasn't great when he was in there. Trent Brown was bad. Karras wasn't great. Shaq Mason was bad. And what we saw the first game when they won was both offense and defensive lines winning in the trenches. And that's pretty much what you needed to do or how they've won a lot of the games this season. When they played after the bye, when they played the Colts, when they played the Bills, and then this game as well, they were just getting pushed around where this is supposed to be one of your strengths this season. And the first half of the first 6 games, it was a weakness, but right around the Texas game, the rest of the way, it was one of their strengths, and they were just getting pushed around, and it led for it. I know the offense wasn't the reason why they lost, because even if they scored 35, 42 points, they were still going to lose because the defense is going to stop anyone. But I thought that there were so many, it was such a disappointing game in so many factors that I couldn't have put actual players in the 3 down, where just whole position groups or whole areas of a specific unit just had to be in it because it was just so bad.
Yep. No, I completely agree. My third one was Hightower, and I don't think it's fully a fault of his own. I think that knee injury has really kind of slowed him down, and potentially we could be seeing this. This could have been his last game with the Patriots. His contract's up, and who knows about that knee? Is it the same knee that's bothered him previously, where I think it was the Jets or the Steelers, I think, when they had given him a big look, they were a little concerned about the medicals. And is it that same knee that's bothering him? Is it something that could be a degenerative thing like Edelman? He looks slow, and a lot slower than he's been, and just really was out of place and had really no fight to really put up. And it's not his fault. I think he's being hamstrung by his physical kind of skills at this point, but he just was not well in this game, and this was kind of a reason why they will have to look younger in this position.
I think that's fair.
Just a couple honorable mentions because I didn't include the whole defense. Well, whole defense was one of them. Matthew Judon was terrible. Jonnu Smith was terrible. Jamie Collins was awful. Juwan Williams sucked and blew. Duggar was bad. Bryant was bad. The 2 practice squad corners ran into each other and had no idea what was going on. And those are my honorable mentions because I could have put any of them in this list. They are all bad. Wise was bad. And those are all the ones that stuck in my head, but there's probably even more I'm not thinking about.
The only defensive player that I can think of that at least showed guts was Barmore, and he was hampered due to his injury. But
100%. Now, kind of looking into the news around the NFL, AFC in particular, there are a couple good games on here in this super wild card weekend, where there's a few good games, and then there's some more blowouts. Bengals Raiders game. What were your thoughts on this? Were you able to watch any of this one at all?
Yeah, I watched. I watched most of it, and it was just the refs. I don't know what to say because the refs have been horrendous all year, and then this was pretty much the high point of horrendous reffing this entire game, where just the one point that sticks out where everyone's talking about was the Bengals touchdown where they blew the whistle mid play, and you can see, I think if they blow the whistle, it's a dead ball, so it doesn't count. You see the defensive back in the end zone holding up once he hears the whistle. Stop. I think that he wouldn't have caught it regardless. I think that the Bengals player was in a position where he was going to catch the touchdown regardless, but you see the player stop, so you don't really know. And then the rules regardless is once the whistle blows, the play is dead. So I don't understand how that's not reviewable. I'm assuming that's something that when the rules committee gets together this offseason, that's going to be something that can be reviewed, similar to too many men on the field, which is something that can be reviewed as well. But overall, it was an entertaining game. It's just, I don't know. It's just such a game that's so competitive and so close just gets overshadowed by the refs. And what's the ref's name? I keep thinking poker, but that's
I keep thinking I forgot his name, but he's at least no longer refereeing any of the playoffs in his whole team, and they were. And
he's always been bad. So I don't understand why you had him reffing in a playoff game.
Yeah. At least he's not going to be reffing any more playoff games. He's like you said, he's been terrible as far as I can remember. He's always been at points of controversy and bad calls, and that wasn't just the only issue with this game. There's a bunch of holding calls.
There were a lot.
And they look so incompetent where they're meeting together. And it's nice when you try and meet together and get the right call, but to meet and get the wrong call or to have no idea what's going on, it's just the refs have gotten worse and worse as the years have gone on. And this was probably the worst that we've seen of them this year, where there's the lack of incompetence, the total incompetence of them. And the fact that too, you've had sky judges added in. And it's not like a big official thing, but the fact that they have these men in the ears that they can listen to for kind of help and guidance in the situation, the fact that they didn't get this right, where it was obvious to everyone, every single person watching it knew that even before the replay, the whistle was blown. And like, what was that? Yeah. And the fact that no one could have buzzed in and told them, oh, you got to blow that dead. There was no touchdown. Or the fact that they didn't realize what happened and why was the whistle blown? Who blew the whistle? What was it for? And none of that was answered. And I think that just really overshadowed kind of the nature of this game. And if that didn't happen, maybe they kick a field goal.
Because that was third down, right?
Yeah, it was third down. So when they replay, are they going to get another touchdown? Are they going to get a first down? Are they going to have to sell for a field goal? If they sell for a field goal, that changes everything. And maybe it ends up the Raiders winning, and maybe it ends up going to overtime. It's just something that shouldn't have happened and made it into that situation.
And he was the ref also of the Chiefs game in 2019. I think you were there too, where
the one with the Harry,
the N'Keal Harry one, where they didn't have enough challenges because Bill already used them because they screwed up so many plays earlier on in the game.
Yeah, so
he was the ref of that too. So he's just a horrendous ref, and I think he should be fired. But I don't think they fire refs. But I don't know how you put him in a big game like that.
Yeah. Next big game, Cowboys 49ers. Kind of two big storylines of this game. Number one, three big storylines. Number one, Jimmy Garoppolo winning another game, always winning. Number two, I don't know about that, choking at the end of the game. And number three, just the lack of clock management by Mike McCarthy in every situation he's ever been in. What are kind of your initial thoughts of what the hell happened in this game? And it was kind of a tale of two different games, and just it made me so happy, and I laughed watching this, knowing what ended up happening to someone that is a complete moron of a coach and shouldn't be a head coach right now. What were your initial thoughts?
It initially seeing that last play call, I remember thinking to myself, because on the TV camera, you can't see how the defense is actually lined up. So I wasn't sure if maybe there was just a huge gaping hole where he thought that he could break it for a touchdown, where everyone's like the Hail Mary on just the ends and then the middle's wide open, he can get for a touchdown. But to do a QB sneak like that and think you're going to have enough time for another play with only 14 seconds left is just moronic, unless you're going for a quick 10 yards, which what is that really going to do? What is the point of that? You're going to waste so much time where you're only going to have one shot left. If you at least do some out routes, then you can maybe gain 10-15 yards and still do two more plays. The thing that it made me think of was after the passing of John Madden, I saw a meme where it was Madden NFL is the reason why 13-year-olds have better game management than Mike McCarthy. And it's been something that I give Aaron Rodgers credit for putting up with him for 10 years, but I don't know who is more the reason why Aaron Rodgers isn't able to succeed, himself for choking in big moments or having Mike McCarthy as a coach for as long as he did. And I think both are valid, but it was just moronic. The stupidest play call I've ever seen. I thought that for as much talent as the Cowboys have, they should be a team that's contending for a Super Bowl. They shouldn't be a team that is in the last 2 years with Dak Prescott as quarterback is 6-9 against teams not in the NFC East.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things with this too is that the lack of either they didn't practice this enough or just the lack of knowledge too, where if you're doing this, usually you'll tell the ref before you do any sort of like trick play or anything that is a little odd. You'll give them a heads up beforehand. We even saw this in the Patriots in 2014, where they gave their refs a heads up saying, hey, we're going to be running this formation. It's legal. And they even tell them even before the game during practice, we're going to be doing this during the game. Watch out for it. No, it's legal. So it doesn't surprise any of you. It just surprised the Ravens. And in this situation, say, hey, we're going to run it. Make sure you're ready to clock the ball and touch it. And the other thing where Dak doesn't have the knowledge to hold the ball and give it to the ref, and whereas they put it down, wasted the time and had them fumble around and cause the whole issue. Whereas if he held onto the ball and gave it to the ref, that would have been enough time to set the ball and have them touch it and get that snap off to spike it. So
even if he did, I don't know if there is enough time, but you have to at least have that under consideration where there would have been
because he clocked it right when it went to 0. So
he didn't he didn't have a chance to. They didn't even have a shot of getting close to snapping it.
No, so it was almost snapped when that happened.
Yeah, I don't know,
but the other aspect of the game, other than just that whole disaster for the Cowboys, and the other fact that the Cowboys have won how many playoff games?
3 playoff games the last 25 years,
which is insane.
With some extremely talented teams.
Jake Delhomme has had more playoff wins than them.
Mark Sanchez, Nick Foles,
Blake Bortles, or no?
Blake Bortles, I think, has 2.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this game was kind of another choke job by Jimmy Garoppolo near the end of the game. But is it a choke job by Jimmy Garoppolo, or is it just an inherent chokiness from Kyle Shanahan?
I think it's Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Shanahan's a horrendous coach who chokes all the time, but I think it was them together makes it even bigger a choke. I don't think Jimmy is a great quarterback, especially in crunch time. I know that he has some game-winning drives. I know he has a 700 winning percentage, but I think part of that is having an extremely talented team and just him doing enough to where the rest of the team wins the game for him.
So it's tough for me to say. I think I'd like to blame more Kyle on this just because I like Jimmy still. And even though I'm not done with him, even though I said I was going to be. So, but it's kind of funny to see where it's the same kind of situation where that Chiefs game happened where all you had to do was not throw an interception. You did.
Yeah.
So it should be interesting to see what happens with the Packers next week. I'm hoping they beat them. And we have a Brady Jimmy NFC Championship game, which would be a pretty interesting storyline. And I'd hope to see Jimmy in the Super Bowl.
Not going to happen.
So our 5 questions of the week, I think we may have 6 or 7.
Just one other thing, just about the rest of the NFL playoff games is outside of those 2 close games, which were marred by other reasons. All the other games were just complete blowouts. So, which was a little surprising. I thought Patriots Bills would be close. I thought Rams Cardinals would be close. I knew Chiefs were going to blow out the Eagles, and I knew the Bucks were going to blow out the Eagles, and Chiefs were going to blow out the Steelers. But just something that there wasn't really much competitive football this weekend.
No, yeah, for the amount of games, it wasn't as fun, I think, as I was hoping it to be. But at least the Eagles game got a little interesting near the end. But so our 5 questions of the week. I think this might be 7, but first one for you: rank the remaining quarterbacks in the playoffs. You don't have to give a whole explanation; just rank them.
Yeah. So my ranking goes Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Burrow, Allen, Jimmy, Stafford, Tannehill. I think Stafford's a better quarterback than Jimmy, but I think Stafford in the playoffs, I know he played better Monday, but I think Stafford in crunch time is more of a choke job than Jimmy. But And Jimmy is kind of too. So
I think they're the exact same one as you. I wasn't really paying attention as much. Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, Burrow, Allen, Jimmy, Stafford, Tannehill.
Yep, that's what I got.
Exact same one. Yeah. So I think the top three are obvious.
Yeah.
I put Burrow ahead of Allen just because I still don't think he's that good. I don't think
Same.
Allen's that good of a quarterback. And I think Burrow has the potential to be a pretty elite quarterback.
I agree.
And then I think Stafford sucks. Not completely sucks, but I think just he crumbles. And then Tannehill isn't good. Next question. Rank the remaining coaches. It was a little bit tougher just because it's harder to kind of see.
Yeah, this was obviously tougher because you don't know how much of it is really the coaches or the coordinators on specific plays and everything. But for me, it's Vrabel, Reed, McVay, LaFleur, McDermott, Shanahan, Arians, and Taylor.
Mine goes Vrabel, McVay, Reed, McDermott, Shanahan, LaFleur, Arians, Taylor. And I think it's kind of interesting. We all have Arians in the bottom. Man, I'm getting fired at this year. Brady has his way. I put just Reed behind McVay just because
I think that's fair.
I feel like Reed's gotten a little bit lucky with having the roster and the talent there.
And he's historically has shown bad time management.
Yes, even with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
LaFleur, I think I put it was tough to really decide the Shanahan LaFleur part just because I think they're both choke artists. And we saw that with LaFleur in the NFC Championship game, their play calling. I hate McDermott, and I think he loses his way, but I think he's a decent coach if he keeps his head screwed on.
That's fair. I agree.
So my next question for you, of all the available coaches and coach, if you had to hire a coach basically right now, of all
Brian
the people
Flores.
that are available, okay, that was quick. That was mine too. So
I don't
not really
think
a
there's
big
any
debate
question.
there. I think the only other possible one that some people forget about is Jim Harbaugh, but I would still take Flores over him probably.
I'd take Flores first, and then probably Jim Harbaugh, and then I think you get into that area of McDaniels or Dayball or someone along those lines. But I think Flores has shown it. He's shown that the players like him, at least supposedly. There have been some reports that some don't, but I think for what he's done in Miami, I think he's done a remarkable job.
Yep, I think no doubt I'd hire Flores. And then you get into those questions about Dayball, McDaniels, even Bill O'Brien, where he's kind of a moron a little bit, but he did well with the Texans before he started stepping into the player development part.
Yeah.
So the player,
and he never had until 2017. He didn't have a quarterback, 2017. He made I think he won the division three times with your quarterbacks being Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, Brock Osweiler, like those types. Yeah. So he's shown that he can be successful. It's just as a coach, at least.
Yep. So I think you have a question to try and kind of get my immediate feedback. So I'd like to see what these next two are.
So I got two questions for you that I haven't posed to you ahead of time. First question: if the Patriots did not trade Stephon Gilmore, how would they have fared this season? Would they have been in the exact same spot? Would they still be playing right now?
It's tough. Because one tough part is I think Gilmore ended the season hurt again.
I think he ended with COVID. I don't know if it was hurt. He might have been hurt too. But
I think he might have been hurt again at some point. So that's tough because would the Patriots maybe have brought him along slower and not try and force him into the game as quick? And maybe he would have been healthy just for the playoffs. I think
he played every week except the last week. And I believe that was a COVID injury or COVID being out.
Then I will say, are you assuming buy-in and he doesn't try and
assuming he just plays,
and that he doesn't say, oh, I have a pulled hammy to try and get out of it. They would be better, obviously. I don't think that's a hard thing to say because they could.
That's not what I asked though.
What
do they finish where they did? Do they lose this first round? Are they the 6th seed and then they end up losing this game? Do they win any of those other games where they're a different seed, or do they win the division? And are they still playing?
I say they probably win the Miami game, or they win one of those games. I think with him, because I don't think they would have been as soft, or they would have won that previous Bills game possibly. I think they would have won at least one more game, and it would have changed the whole seeding, possibly changed the whole divisional aspect of this. And they may not have been facing the Bills. If they faced the Bills in that round, they still probably would have lost.
Yeah.
Judging just the lack of bodies and how broken down they were at the end. But they may, if they had faced another team, they might have won. So I think that it all depends on who they faced in this round. But I think they would have at least won one more game more, and then changed the whole seeding possibly. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree completely. It's tough to really know. I think if you have them, you win at least one of those games, the Miami game, and then either maybe the Colts, probably not, but also the Bills game. I think you might win that game, which if you do that, you win the division. You're the 3 seed, and you're probably playing the Raiders in the first round.
Yes.
I don't know how that. Yeah, you play the Raiders, I believe, unless you play the Bills at home, which that might have been the same outcome.
Actually, no, it would have been the same. It would have been Bills because it probably would have been. Yeah, it's really tough to say because anything else.
But I think they would have at least either won the division or they're the 5 seed and they played the Bengals first round, which I think they would win. Actually,
I think they might have lost that game anyway.
It's tough to know. It's just but
because the Bengals, I think, are really good with at least their offensive weapons.
But I think the Raiders aren't great. And I think that for the game being that close, and if it wasn't for that inadvertent whistle, the Raiders possibly winning that game, I think the Patriots could have pulled that out.
That's fair. Your next question.
If you had to demote one of your 3 coordinators or de facto coordinators, which one are you demoting?
Steve Belichick. That's easy.
Even more than the special teams coordinator?
Oh, shit. Yes, because special teams only accounts for a small percentage of your plays. Where the amount of time, actually, that's just for actual return coverage, where it's like, I think 4 plays in a game or something like that. But the amount of plays on special teams are so small compared to defense. And if you did demote Steve, maybe Gerard figures something out on his own, and then Bill can divert his attention to special teams. Steve, no matter 100%.
I think that's fair. I think I would go with Kim. Is that his name? The special teams coordinator, just with how horrendous the special teams has been. And they've actually cost you could argue if you had Joe Judge as your special teams coordinator, granted, you don't know if this stuff still would have happened, but you might win the division if you have a different special teams coordinator. I think Steve Belichick or the Patriots defense at least has had some really good games this year. It's just tough to really know which is because of Steve, which is because of Bill. And if you do demote Steve, who takes over? I think that's just the biggest question mark of if you had someone in line like a Romeo Cornell or a Brian Flores, where you're confident in them taking over, then yes, but I don't know who that is based on this current coaching staff.
I still think that how poor they were playing before and how poor they played this last game. I think they need a stronger voice in the room. And someone that's got a little bit more respect than just being the coach's son. So I'd go with Steve in that instance.
Okay, that's fair.
So this is kind of similar to the previous question, but not really. What would you rank Mac's performance among the quarterbacks this past weekend?
So going into this, the reason why I asked this was going into this, we ranked all the quarterbacks going into the playoffs. And I believe both of us ranked Mac around 10 or 11 out of 14. I thought he played really well. I put him right around a little higher than middle of the pack, where I thought Allen, Brady, Mahomes, and Burrow, and Stafford had better games, but he was clearly better than, in my opinion, Jimmy, Hurts, Dak, Big Ben, Murray, and I think Carr as well, but I could see the argument where Carr had a good game too. So that puts him right around 6 out of 12. So a little better than half. That's my opinion, but I thought he had a really good game. Some quarterbacks were Murray is a 2-time Pro Bowler, Big Ben, Hall of Famer, but he's obviously in decline. But even Dak is someone that's pretty good quarterback. He's slipped since his injury this year, but I thought Mac in those contexts, I thought he played a pretty good game.
Yeah. I have Mac at 5, and I forget to put Dak in there, but I can mentally put him in. So I've got Allen, Brady, Mahomes, Burrow, Mac, Stafford, Jimmy, Dak, Carr, Hurts, Murray, Rapisberger. So I think the Mac Stafford one, I think, was the hardest one I had to kind of toss up because Stafford ended up winning the game. I think Mac did a lot more for his team, even though they lost. Than Stafford. But I think that's a pretty toss up where you could kind of say one or the other, but I'd say right around the middle, like you said.
Yep.
5-6 ish,
which for a rookie quarterback is really good.
Just the last question. Because the Patriots who are you going to be rooting for going forward for the remainder of the playoffs?
So win the whole thing or just each of these upcoming games this weekend?
How about upcoming games and then who you want to win the whole thing?
Upcoming games, Brady, I'm rooting for over, or Bucks, I'm rooting for over the Rams. I'm rooting for 49ers over the Packers. AFC, I'm rooting for, I don't care as much in the Titans-Bengals game. I want the winner of that game to go to the Super Bowl. Probably Titans just because of Vrabel, but I'm indifferent on that. And then Bills Chiefs is tough because I hate both teams. Both are so cocky. I think I'm rooting for the Chiefs just because of I don't like the Bills right now, especially with how they've handled everything. After the Bills beat the Patriots last time, them like celebrating, running off the field, talking trash, and then also in a wild card game. Granted, it is your rival, the Patriots, who for the last 20 years, you beat, I think, 3 times. But after you win, you're playing We Are the Champions for winning a wild card game. I think they're going to get killed by the Chiefs. But even though I don't like the Chiefs and I don't like the Nick Wrights of the world, I don't want to see the Bills win.
Yep, I think you have all similar ones to who are you rooting for the Super Bowl?
That's the
gun to your head right now.
Who do I want to win?
Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Bucks.
Ooh.
So that's tough because I'm fine with I'd be happy with any of the 4 of Bucks, 49ers, Titans, Bengals. I think if this was before week 4 of you playing the Bucks, I want the Bucks to lose. I'm still bitter about Brady, but I got so much closure after that game, of seeing just how well they played against them, how well Mac performed. But then also after that game, Brady has seemed to show more of fond times of his time with New England, him referring more of respect for Belichick and everything. So where I'm fine with rooting for him. But if this was before that, I'd probably say Titans with Vrabel.
Yep. I think he's realized now that he's been with Arians for a year and almost 2 years now, how much Bill actually did for him and did for the team, and so much stuff that he didn't have to worry about where now he's handling because Arians is a terrible coach. So I think that's where he's kind of had a newfound respect for how things were run. We knew that he would realize the grass isn't greener as you think, but sometimes you have to go someplace else to realize that sort of stuff.
You have to go to a place where you win the Super Bowl and you're in contention for winning another.
So, and he's gonna get a little bit out of himself because this is another coach that he once fired or once gone, and apparently doesn't like Brian Leftwich either. So, it's just a little interesting that it's getting a little.
I don't know how true those rumors are, but they don't surprise me.
Yeah. So I'd be rooting for this week Bucks, 49ers, Titans, and Chiefs. I just really want the Bills to get crushed. I really want McDermott to just feel so bad after this game based on everything that's happened with them. It's frustrating just to watch where they treat this as a Super Bowl, and usually when that happens, they end up losing. So we've seen that over and over.
We saw that with the Colts this year.
Yep. So And then I want to see the 49ers win the Super Bowl, not because of Shanahan, and I really hate Shanahan. I really want to see Jimmy Garoppolo win. Number one, beat Brady in 2 weeks, and then win the Super Bowl, have some kind of redemption for his previous one. I also want to see the 49ers have a really big decision to make next year, where do we keep Jimmy for another year and sit Lance, who we've traded 3 first-round picks for, and to have him sit behind Jimmy, or do we trade the Super Bowl, whatever, I forget what number this is now, 52, 50 something, the
55
Super Bowl winning quarterback, and get rid of him, even though he won the Super Bowl
56.
and help them win. So it'll be a nice situation to kind of see what unfolds if that happens, and kind of nice little eggs just to see where, oh, maybe we give up on him too quick, where I probably would have too. But just a nice little weird thing to go on, which would be nice. And also still another redemption for Bill, saying that I did get the right guy, and I just had to move on for him because Brady was still too good. So that's where I end on that. So
yeah, for me, I don't want I was thinking maybe the 49ers, but the more I think of it, I don't want them to win for 2 reasons. I'm still not a Jimmy G guy. I never really was. I thought he was a better version of Ryan Tannehill. I still believe that. But B, if the 49ers do win, you're going to have the Ben Volans and Dan Shaughnessy's of the world saying the Patriots should have never gotten rid of him. Look at him. If you have Jimmy G, you have a better shot of winning the Super Bowl, even though I think Mac Jones right now is a better quarterback than Jimmy G. If you didn't trade Jimmy G, you don't win Super Bowl, 2018 Super Bowl, because even though Jimmy G could have won that game against the Chargers and could have won that Super Bowl game, there's no way he beats the Chiefs in that high scoring game. So I don't want to see that, because I'm not a big fan of Jimmy G to begin with. I think Mac Jones is a much better number 10 quarterback for the Patriots, but I also don't want all the Patriots beat writers to keep going with that narrative of they should have never moved on from Jimmy G.
That's true, but I'm willing to ignore it just to see him win, have another Paisan. Maybe first Paisan win the Super Bowl. I don't know if there's been a.
I never really looked at Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. There must be at least one.
It could be. There's not really many Italians that do anything though, but well,
that's true.
He's not full Italian either. He's only half. But
not Mudblood.
Muggle?
No,
Mudblood.
I don't know I don't remember the term. Mudblood is no.
No?
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever it was. I haven't read that in forever. So anyway, we're getting off the rails here. So thank you everyone for listening. We'll be with you next week. We'll be doing weekly podcasts still throughout the end of the season. When it gets into the off season, we'll probably go into like an every other week, just because there's probably not gonna be that much content. If there is something that breaks, we'll obviously have a podcast that week to kind of address it, break down what happened. But we'll have some interesting things lined up for the next few weeks. Try and get some guests on this off season too, just to get a little bit more kind of breakdowns and look to see what's happening and get kind of just some fresh lenses into this. So remember, follow us at Pat's 300 Level Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and follow us on YouTube as well if you're just listening to the pod. Subscribe, rate, and review. If you listen on multiple different platforms, subscribe both spots, and you could review on not only Apple, but you could review on Spotify, you could review on Google, you could review on YouTube. Make sure you like those videos as well. So thank you very much. We'll be catch you next time.